So this is new. This is the first in a series of videos and podcasts on my channel, S.A.M.Clinics. My name's Sam, thank you for joining me. So today we are going to be talking, or I'm going to be talking about my why and about my career and about the choices that I've made throughout my career and what's really led me to where I am today. So recently, if you've seen me before, you may have seen parts of my journey already. You may have seen the newspaper article that was out this week, which was talking about my why, which is what I want to talk to you about today. And what's really brought this around is I'm currently up for, I was nominated for a couple of awards in Milton Keynes recently, the MK Inspiration Awards and Women Leaders Awards. And I've been chosen as a finalist on both of those, which I'm super proud about. And the process of going through this has actually made me really think about my life, really, what I've kind of been through, what's made me make the choices that I've made, why I've chosen to do the type of work that I'm doing and what I'm kind of driven to want to do with my career going forward. And I had to write some of it down, and I wrote it in a like a time scale, a timeline of events, of things throughout my life, like key points, key things, significant things to me. And as I was writing it down, first of all, it was really emotional because it made me think about some things that I have been through, which weren't nice things. But as I was going through it, it made me really realise how those things shaped my decisions and the choices that I made and what drives me within my work and in my kind of daily life. And I've been talking to people about it, and I've realised that there could be something useful in there for other people, which is why I'm going to talk about it more and why I wanted to do this. And I've been writing a lot more about it, which has been a bit like a therapy, I guess. Writing it all down, and it brings some of the things up which has been really tough. When I first wrote it down, I actually, later that day I had to go to bed. I was absolutely emotionally overloaded. And I had to go and lay down and kind of sleep it off, and then I felt really low for a few days. So I feel like it's kind of opened up some things and made me aware of some things that I need to work on for myself as well. But it's been a really amazing progress because it actually made me have a couple of moments where I was like, oh, that's why I do this, or that's why I've made this decision, or that's why I want to try and help people in this way because of what I've been through. So if you saw the newspaper article, then you would have heard some of the things that I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning. I'm going to just talk it through, and I hope that some of the things that I talk about might be able to help other people or give other people some hope or give other people some inspiration to keep going. That's really my main aim. And I thought the first episode of my videos, which aren't going to be all about this kind of thing, these videos are going to be educational and discussing lots of things about my work that I do, and still wanting to help lots of people kind of going forward. So I know it all the way back to my childhood, which I've got such happy memories of my childhood. My mum and dad are amazing. I'm super, super close with them still now. I'm really lucky to get to spend lots of time with them, and really my mum and dad and my kids are the people that I spend the most time with, which I wouldn't want it any other way. I've got an amazing group of friends as well, so I know I'm really, really lucky. So going back to my childhood, mum and dad worked really hard. They both had full-time jobs, they worked really hard to make sure we didn't go without. Had a lovely home which my dad actually built, which that's my dream as well. I'd love to build my own house one day, following in his footsteps. Unfortunately I don't have the building skills. But I had a lovely childhood. I can't complain. My mum was amazing. She used to read me bedtime stories and we used to sing songs when we went to bed. My dad was always super present. Lots and lots of beautiful holidays, and it was just, I've got such good warm memories with them. When I was 14, I guess because mum and dad worked hard, I was always seeing their efforts and wanting to probably make them proud and work hard myself. And at 14 I got my first job. I worked in a gun club, and if I've ever told you this before, I've probably told you that I was an arms dealer when I was 14, because I find that really amusing. Because I sold the ammunition for the guns and the round cards for the guys to go around and do their shoots in the morning. So that was my first job. It was every other Sunday, and I loved it. It gave me a little bit of independence, a little bit of pocket money, which at 14, £15 every other week was pretty good back then. And by 16, I had 3 jobs. I was working at the gun club still. I worked at Wyvale Garden Centre in the pet department, looking after the pets and selling them and helping people understand how to look after them. Anyone who knows me knows I love animals still today. And my other job was working in a telesales job, which was an evening job. I was still at school doing my GCSEs as well. So I was always driven, I think, I was never scared of hard work. I was always driven to push through, and it wasn't easy doing all of that, and because I was missing out on some time with my friends, but then it meant that the weekends when I had a bit of time on my hands, I could go out, I had some money. I saved up to buy my first car, which we went to an auction to buy. I went with mum and dad, and I panicked at one point because I'd asked my dad to do the bidding, and he kept bidding after we went. I think I'd saved like £400, and he just kept bidding, and I was like, oh, I don't have that much money, and they paid the difference. So I bought my first little car, which was a Fiat Uno. I was probably still 16 at the time, actually. I just couldn't wait to be independent. I wanted to get out there and do them proud. When I was finishing school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was into art. I loved art at school. I used to love drawing. I used to draw pictures of ladies' figures with these dresses on, and I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a fashion designer. So I think mum probably helped me do the application, and I had to go through a few interviews at London College of Fashion, which is a really tough place to get into, by the way. And I had to take my little portfolio of all my stuff, and I went through, I can't remember how many interviews it was, I think it was at least 2 to 3, and they offered me space. And then I remember reading through the prospectus and seeing that you had to make the clothes, you had to sew them, and I was like, I don't want to sew the clothes, I just want to draw them. And I spoke to one of the ladies there, and she was like, well, when you're an established designer, you can do what you want, you don't have to make them then, but as part of the course you do. And I remember thinking, no, that's not for me, I just wanted to draw. So that was that, didn't take that, and then I went back and I was like, what am I going to do? And my design teacher at school said, why don't you think about interior design, because that's still design. So I thought, okay, let me give that a bit of thought. And they actually did our last piece of coursework on interior design, and I didn't like that either. So I was like, oh god, back to square one again, what am I going to do? And I went to a careers day in central Milton Keynes, and they had people there from Milton Keynes College, and I remember speaking to some of the tutors from the beauty therapy department, and I thought, oh, that sounds quite good. It felt, I liked like sciencey stuff, it was all like anatomy and physiology, and it was obviously the art as well, because you need to have a certain level of artistic flair, I think, to do any type of beauty work. So I signed up and started my level 2 in beauty, did my year, I went into level 3 holistics because I didn't fancy the level 3 beauty. And then in my second year, I also found, in fact, it might have even been at the end of my first year, I started working in a salon in central Milton Keynes, and they had one salon here, one in Towcester, and one in Buckingham. So there was 3 salons. I was initially in the Milton Keynes one. I think she had another 1 or 2 people who worked for her. But then she was going on maternity leave, and I was the only one who drove, so I kind of ended up feeling like I was managing the 3 salons, because sometimes we'd need a piece of equipment that was over in Towcester and it needed to get to Buckingham. And I was like kind of thrown into this role of having to keep an eye on what was booked where, and it just sort of fell into the role of managing the salons really. And after a little while I thought, do you know what, like if I'm doing this, and the pay wasn't any different either by doing the extra work, I thought let me see if I can do something on my own. So I started thinking about opening my own mobile business. It was called Body and Nails by Sam, and I remember calling the Citizen newspaper, which is actually the newspaper with the article that had me in the other day, so that's a bit funny because it's a bit of a full circle around. I called them and had a meeting with them about putting an advert in the newspaper, because that was the options back then. We didn't have this, we didn't have mobile phones. Well, we had mobile phones, but not ones with data. We didn't have like all of the kind of platforms that we've got now. And they had a meeting with me, told me how much it cost. I remember thinking, oh my god, like that's really expensive. I don't know what it was, probably like £30 a week or something, which seemed like crazy expensive because I wasn't kind of bringing any money in from this new business yet. But I did it, I committed to it, and I was so excited to see that in the paper, to like pick up the paper and see my little advert in there. It was a tiny little one as well, it was probably like maybe 2 inches by an inch. It was like the tiniest little thing. So it had my business name and my mobile number, and I'd gone to the wholesalers. I bought myself a little diary, and I had all my stuff ready to go. And I remember getting my first phone call, and I just panicked because I was like, like what am I going to do? Like this is like my business. It was the first phone call I've ever had, and I was so excited and like worried, and all at the same time. And I answered, I was like, hello, Body and Nails by Sam. And I took my first booking, and that was it, and it just kept getting busier. So around that time I was working around Milton Keynes, some clients out here in Newport actually, where my clinic is now. Some of those clients I actually still have today, which is amazing because that was about 27 years ago. And yeah, that started to pick up. I did have a couple of days a week I was doing in another salon as well. And that was my very first business. And then I was doing that, carrying on working. I met my son's dad, and probably around a similar time. In fact, I think when I first put my advert in the newspaper, we were together at that time. And when I was 19, I found out I was pregnant with my son, who is one of my best friends. And again, like I said before, we're super close. And although I had him young, I don't feel like I've missed out on anything because I've had such support from my mum and dad. Obviously being a young parent was tough. Being pregnant was pretty tough, and during the pregnancy his father began to change towards me, and the relationship became really toxic and quite violent. And I'm not going to go into lots of detail about it because I don't feel like this is the space for it, but it was a really scary time for me. We split up a few times actually, and then I was really scared of being a single mum on my own, you know, like I was 19 years old. And eventually it got worse and worse, and eventually I had to move house to get away and feel safer with my son. So we moved house, we ended up moving a couple of times, and he found out where we lived. His family weren't supposed to let on where we lived, but he did find out a few times. But I got away, and had at least enough safety to try to feel like I could start to move on. And then shortly after that, I think it was probably in the times where he still knew where I lived. I'd been out with friends one night and had another awful experience. I'd been out and I had my drink spiked and ended up going through a horrific ordeal, which resulted in a court case, and the two men involved were both imprisoned for the offence and the assault. So as you can imagine, at the end of that, young mum on her own, I was still working and managed to carry on working. I feel like it was all a bit of a blur, and I had, like I say, the support of mum and dad, and it was, I don't really remember a huge amount about that time. I think I was just trying, I was in survival mode, just trying to get through. And it makes me really sad actually, because there's quite a lot of my son's like early years that I don't remember. I think because I was just trying to just get through that time. But I did, I got through it. And a few years later, a friend and I decided to go to a pole dancing one-to-one lesson, which I remember being like, oh my God, what am I doing? I was absolutely terrified. But we went to this one-to-one with a lady called Amey, who is one of my best friends in the whole world now. I'm going to talk a bit more about her, but we went to this one-to-one, and I remember just thinking, she was so strong and elegant and beautiful, and she kind of represented how I wanted to feel. I remember at the end of the session we were like, oh, do something really amazing. This was she did the one-to-one from her house. So she like ran at the pole and did this amazing like spinning upside down thing, and I was just completely in awe of like how strong and confident she looked. And I think I remember like thinking, oh, I just love to feel like that. I'd love to feel as beautiful and as confident as she is. And I was hooked really. I think we started going to the group classes, one-to-ones. I couldn't really afford to do them all the time, so we had a few of those, and I went to the group classes as well. And I remember seeing all of these women kind of doing all this stuff, and looking back, it was actually quite like basic spins, and then maybe climbing up the pole and doing like a layback and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, they're amazing. I'm never going to be able to do anything like that. But I kept going, and I was able to do something like that. After time, I started to be like, oh, I can actually do this. I can do the things that these other women can do. Like, they looked amazing doing it. Maybe I'm stronger than I thought. And I think that was when I started to, I say this to people all the time, pole helped me rebuild my relationship with my body and take back control of my body and my life, which I felt like had been taken away from me. And pole completely changed that, because it made me be proud of my body for what it could do, and not be so caught up in what it had been through, what it looked like. I had no kind of self-confidence in myself anymore, and that began to change because I started to be like, I didn't think I could do that, and I've done it. So maybe there's other things that I'm thinking about that I think I can't do that I would be able to do. And it sort of opened my eyes to so many possibilities. And I kept going, and eventually Emily asked me if I would consider training up to teach, which I was like, that was a huge, first of all, I remember thinking, oh my God, what do you want me to stand up in front of these people in shorts and tell them what to do? And it was just like, I was completely terrified. But she pushed me out of my comfort zones on more than one occasion, I think the first time she taught us a routine, and then we had to kind of get up and do the routine, not even on our own, like in a group of people. And I didn't want to do it because I felt so self-conscious, like in the early days, and she made me do it. In fact, I think I probably was crying whilst I was doing it. I was trying to do this bloody beautiful routine that she's taught us, and I felt horrific inside. But I did it, I got up and I did it. I think she literally told me off. I remember sitting on the floor and she was like, get up there and get on. And I hated her for it in that moment. But afterwards, I was like, again, it was another moment where I was like, oh, I did it. I've done something that I didn't think I could do. I've done something that really, 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 really scared me. And that might seem really silly to some people because it's such a little thing. But for me, that was huge, like massive. I don't think I could even feel my tongue when I got off the pole at the end of it because I'd been so scared. And she did that to me a few times actually when I started teaching. She made me, at the end of classes, do like a little demo. And I'd come off like literally dripping in sweat and like full of fear and adrenaline. But every time she pushed me, it broke through another little barrier. And then when she'd asked me to teach, I thought, I can't imagine anything better than spending more of my time not just doing this, but hopefully giving other people that feeling and giving other people that change of view, showing them that they're capable of things that they just never thought they would be capable of, and hopefully changing some other people's feelings about their bodies too, because I know so many women who walked through the doors back then probably felt similar to me. So I trained up to teach, and we set up my first class over in Brackley Leisure Centre, and then Emily and I ended up going separate ways with business, and I then set up S.A.M.Clinics Fitness, which was my second proper business. This was going to be a pole fitness school classes. I was in Brackley initially, and then I set up a couple of classes in Milton Keynes, and then one of my, again, current best friends, Anita, she had found me on Facebook. I don't even know how. I used to post obviously a lot of pole stuff, and she'd seen some of it, and she was messaging me, and she was like, please come to Aylesbury, bring this to Aylesbury. She's like, I'm going to bring everyone, I'm going to bring all my friends, all my cousins. And so I'd started to look into venues there, so I started teaching there as well, and eventually when that business was at its peak, we had classes in Milton Keynes, Aylesbury, High Wycombe, Towcester, Banbury, Brackley, Northampton, pretty much loads of venues over Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire, Northamptonshire, and even Bedfordshire a little bit as well. So that business kind of grew and grew, and I think I probably got into that when pole was really becoming a big thing in the UK. Over my time in the industry, I worked with so many incredible, inspirational women. I was part of the Pole Sports Federation in the first few years. I was the assistant to Katie Coates, who was the president of the World Pole Sports Federation. So I worked on the competitions, I worked on the World Pole Dance competition and a few other ones. We put on loads of events with people from all over the world. We travelled to different countries to go to competitions. I had students who competed. I trained some of my students up to become instructors eventually, because obviously as it was growing I couldn't be in all of those places at once. So we had a team of about 11, I think, when we had the most in one sort of time. Plus we had some assistants who worked with us as well. I also was part of setting up one of the biggest, well, it was the biggest pole jam in the UK at the time. We had the newspaper come there, we were on the radio multiple times. We had the radio come and and actually they were working from our classes. Sometimes we put on a session, we were on 3 Counties Radio, which I think is on YouTube somewhere. So over the years, obviously it grew. I think I met and taught thousands, over 1,000 women, met many more than that. And eventually I decided to open my first physical premises, which was Sky High Studio. And if I just go backwards a little bit from that, I had my daughter in 2012, and I opened my studio in 2013, so I had a 1-year-old. Don't know quite what I thought I was doing there by opening a premises, but it felt like the right thing. It felt like we needed a home, a space that was just, you know, just for us. And we had obviously our pole, S.A.M.Clinics Fitness was from there. We had other businesses come and work from there. We had some street dance, we had some aerial fitness, we had a belly dance teacher for a while. We taught other fitness classes as well. I taught lots of different core fitness and different like legs, bums and tums, and it just felt like exactly what we needed. And it was a space that I wanted to feel like a safe space. I wanted it to feel like a space everyone could come and completely be themselves and be able to express themselves with no judgment and just feel safe and accepted, and nobody be worried about what anyone else looked like or if they looked the same as anyone else. We had women, not just women, we did teach males, and we had a male instructor as well, Stevie, again one of my best friends. And watching women come in, I'm going to say women because it was mostly, watching women come in and look so worried and uncomfortable and self-conscious and kind of, they didn't want to take their leggings off, they didn't want to kind of really get too involved in the beginning with other people. Watching them come in like that and then seeing their confidence grow and build and their friendships develop and our community build, and after say 6 or 8 weeks of classes, they're coming in, they're whipping off their leggings, they've got their heels if we're doing a heels class, like they were just completely different women. And I love that, like that to me was exactly why I did it. And I knew by seeing that I'd managed to create a space that could nurture them and how they felt about themselves, and that really was the main reason I did it. I had it was actually on Facebook message from one of my students one day that really broke my heart. She'd said that before she joined our classes, she'd been feeling really, really low. She'd been at points where she didn't want to be here anymore, and she was messaging me to say thank you for creating a space where she began to feel like she had people and she had a community and she wasn't on her own, and being in a supportive environment where we celebrated everybody and everybody's little wins, no matter how small. So that was a moment where one of the saddest and the proudest moments in my career was receiving that message. And I had a few similar things over the time that I worked in Pole as well. And then in 2016, I started to have quite a lot of health issues. I was having a lot of pain with my ovaries. I started to have some tests, and they found that I had some cysts on my ovaries, so I'd had a scan. They sent me back in a few weeks to have another scan, and they'd grown by like, one of them I think had grown from like 3 centimetres to like 8.5 centimetres on the right side. There was the first scan, there wasn't one, and then by the second scan it was like 4 centimetres. So these things had grown really, really quickly, and I was in so much pain. My stomach was really bloated. I was struggling with pole, so I had to kind of pull back from that for a bit. And the cysts actually ended up bursting, which was on a flight actually. I was going to Dubai with my ex-husband, and I was in so much pain, but we booked this trip and we went, and I think it's the pressure that caused them to burst. And anyway, when I came back, I went for another scan, they'd gone, so that kind of confirmed that was what had happened. And in the meantime, during the scans that I'd been having for the cyst, they'd kind of by accident found that I had another cyst in my pancreas. So then I had to start going through tests for that. So meanwhile, I'm still not working in doing pole at the moment. I still had all the classes running with my team, and I'd actually started doing some more beauty treatments again around that time. In fact, I'd started that in 2015, so I'd been doing some beauty bits by the time I was having these kind of health issues. So then I go under another load of tests for the pancreas, and that condition needs to be monitored, because the type of condition that it is, the younger you are when you have it, the more likely it is to, I suppose, it's got more time to develop and change as you get older, so I have to have regular MRIs for that. So when I got that letter to say what that was, I can't remember what it's called, but I remember reading the word in the letter and Googling it, and I think reading the statistics on like fatalities from it based on age, and the younger you are, obviously, the more likely it is to kind of turn into cancer later on. And it literally shook my life up, and I remember thinking, I need to just get out of the house. So I got my dog, Beefy, my Rottweiler that I had at the time, and we just went for a walk. I only had this jumper that was like my safe jumper, so I put on had a fluffy unicorn on the front of it, I put on my fluffy unicorn jumper and went and had a walk with him. And I really felt in that moment, I was like, oh my God, like, it made me realise how short life is. I can't even work out how old I was then. That was in 2016, so I would have been, 34, I think. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener, because I think you don't really think about how long you've got until you're in a position where that might be coming to an end. And obviously that was I'm okay, and they just monitor it. So now I kind of see it as like, I'm thankful to the cysts and the pain that I had, because without having had those, they wouldn't have found this other one, and if it hadn't been found, they wouldn't monitor it, which means if it does start to turn, it might not have been picked up. So that was, in my mind, a blessing, or a signal from the universe, you know, like, I feel like these things happen for a reason. So going back to work, what that meant for me for work is I'd kind of stopped teaching. I'm now in a position where my body had been through a lot, I'd been through a lot. I thought, I don't feel like I'm ready to go back to teaching yet, but I still need to earn a living. So I kind of was working more and more on the beauty side of things, with the intention of eventually going back to teaching at some point. And then I think at the time I'd been working from the studio, from Sky High Studio. I had like a reception area, which I had a beauty bed in there. So I just did my treatments from there. And it started to feel a bit like, oh, this doesn't quite feel right, I need something else, I need a better space. So I spoke to a lady, Nikki, who owns a salon over in Crown Hill, and I'd worked there for years, on and off over my beauty career. So I spoke to her to see if she'd be prepared to rent me a room, because I knew she had the place to herself. So I went in and worked there. And I had my little beauty room, and I had to do all my treatments from there, and I felt like I grew quite quickly, like the appointments were coming in thick and fast, and every time I had an appointment come in, I needed to move my little bed around to make space depending on what I was doing. So I thought, you know what, maybe it's time to start looking for somewhere of my own, a salon space. So I started looking around. It's not easy to find the right sort of space, and eventually I found my first salon space, which was in Tickford Arcade, which is actually downstairs from where I'm sat right now, number 8 Tickford Arcade. There was 2 units next to each other that were up for rent, more or less the same. The only difference was the one that I chose was like the tiniest little bit bigger. So my creative juices got to work. I drew out a little, because it used to be, I think, a handbag shop before I had it, so it was quite like an open space and it had lots of built-in cupboards and stuff. So I drew out the space and then drew my little plan of how I wanted it to be. We were going to have a couple of nail desks, we were going to have a treatment room. I needed to put in a toilet because we didn't have a toilet in there. And then the rest of it was kind of open space that was for anything else, like pedicures or lashes or makeup, anything like that. So I had some investment from a silent partner, and we got it done. We got all the work done. We opened later that year. Still had the studio as well. At the time, I had a lady who'd been working on my reception there for some time. We'd discussed setting up a business together, and eventually her becoming part owner of the studio and the pole business. So I was thinking at the time, I can do this, I can do both, and I'm ready, I can go back to teaching pole. This is all going to go well, and we were going to relaunch the studio timetable in the September. We were actually opening the first salon in the September as well. So everything was go, and then we were just in the process of getting everything set up, and then the lady who I was working with found out she was pregnant with her first son. And she said, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. So I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? I've just signed the lease on the salon here. I'd signed a new lease on the studio. And now I was going to have two businesses, two physical premises opposite side of Milton Keynes. And I was like, I don't actually know if I can do that. So there was a bit of kind of emotional back and forth, I guess, because that studio meant so much to me. I had such an emotional kind of connection with it, which is probably never a great thing in business, but it is what it is. And eventually I had to make the decision to close the studio. I knew from a financial business perspective I was going to be better off with the salon, and as much as it kind of broke my heart to have to do it, it had to be done, you know. So we closed the studio in the October, I think, of that year. That was 2017, and we just recently opened the salon here. And then the salon started to get busier. I started to have to look at taking on other people. We started to grow a little team. We took on some work experience people, and so we had a Saturday girl, and it was really getting nice and busy. And by 2018, end of 2018, I was thinking, God, we need more space. So I started looking at if I could change the layout in the salon. We did. We ended up adding a second room, and I'd spoken to my landlord because I didn't know whether one of the units either side of me might kind of leave at some point. And I said, if that happens, let me know because I need some more space. And I was away on holiday, took my son away just after his GCSEs with a friend, and I got a phone call from the landlord saying that the hair salon, which was a couple of doors along from our original salon, was becoming available, and did I want it? And I remember thinking, well, how's that going to work? Because we couldn't knock through between them because there was another shop in between. I said, well, leave it with me. He said, I won't do anything whilst you're away, have a think about it. So I was thinking about it, and I thought, why not have two? We could actually open a hair department as well, and there was actually a downstairs to the hair salon which had a space which was like a kitchen and storage, a bit of a staff room, and then there was another room down there and a toilet. So I thought, well, I could move my skin clinic downstairs. We could have the beauty kind of staying where it is in the original salon. So I thought, let's go for it. So I think it was, again, probably September 2019, so pretty much bang on 2 years after opening the first salon, we opened salon number 2, and we became Ever After Hair, Beauty and Aesthetics rather than just beauty and aesthetics. And it was great. I had some amazing members of staff working with me. I had a brilliant team. All of the girls who worked for me were amazing at their jobs. And we were really thriving, things were on the up, and then lockdown hit. And as you know, I think any small business that was operating at that time, that especially service-based businesses, were hit really bloody hard. And during the first few months, we didn't know, well, nobody knew what was happening. We had no idea if or when we were going to open again. Was this going to be how we were now? When we do open, how's it going to be? The government had made all these promises to support businesses and people, but it wasn't happening. In fact, I saw on my timeline recently, I'd been on the phone, I think it was like about 9 hours. I was on the phone to my business banking one day because I was trying to get some support from the bank, because the government was saying the banks were going to support us and couldn't get through. And most of the people who worked for me were mums, and I was thinking, well, how is everyone going to pay their bills, you know? At the time I was married, so I was in a more, I suppose, lucky position because we had 2 incomes at the time, and his job was able to continue. And I was really worried about how they were going to cope, so I took a personal loan to pay for their wages in the first bit. And I remember thinking, oh my god, the government has to come through on this, because if it doesn't, I'm screwed, like literally screwed. This isn't money that I can afford to pay back, you know. But I did, and the government did come through, so it turned out to be okay in the end. But that was a really, really, really big risk for me to do. And then eventually, obviously, we started coming back to work, but there were so many changes. We had so many restrictions. We were supposed to have the 2 metre distancing. We had to spend an absolute fortune on getting the screens between people. And obviously, I mean, in this industry, everything has to be clean and sterile between clients anyway, but that was being taken to extremes where we were having to kind of try and sterilise soft furnishings like this, and we couldn't have people kind of sat waiting in the salon. We obviously, everyone had to be wearing masks, like everything was different. We had to make changes which were really costly to the business, and during that time, kind of as we were coming out of lockdowns, I was going through a divorce. I had the 2 salons to run, which is 2 lots of bills. We had a huge debt coming out of lockdowns as well, because we still had a lot of the bills that we had to pay throughout the whole lockdown. And although we did get some government support, we still came out of it with sort of 30 to 40,000 in debt. And I mean, before we went in the lockdowns, we were still a relatively small business. We were still in our first 5 years. So it was a really tough time, because I felt like I didn't have enough of me for anything. I felt like I was kind of stretched between everything, trying to deal with the personal situation and my children, and kind of coping with the divorce and the financial situation with that, plus the 2 different businesses, and then things happening within the business. 2 of my girls came back from lockdowns expecting babies, so it was a lot to kind of deal with, and I thought something's got to give. It's got to be, I can't do this. I'm going to end up ill again, is how I kept thinking, if I have to sort of carry on as I am. So I made the decision to sell the hair salon, because I thought, well, I can move back into the beauty salon. That's kind of taking it back down to 1 unit that I have to manage. So that took some time, but I managed to find somebody to take that on. I moved back into the other unit, but I was still thinking it didn't feel right anymore. I think because I'd had a bigger skin clinic, and I'd got used to that space, and then when I moved back into the other one, I felt like I couldn't get anything right. It didn't feel right. It felt like a bit of a regression. And although changes need to happen, I didn't want to feel like I was regressing. I wanted to still feel like that change was a progression. So I started to think about what other options I had. I considered changing some of the space at home and having a home salon. And then again, the landlord came to me and he said, oh, there's another unit that's become available, same building upstairs. And I'd actually looked at it a few years before when we were looking for some more space, but it was too big for us then. It didn't feel like it was necessary to kind of take on that much more space. But when I came up here and looked, I mean, it just seemed like perfect. It was bigger than the salon, the space that we were in. It needed a lot of work. The room that I'm sat in now, which is my clinic, this room is the selling point for me because we've got beautiful big windows, we had loads of light and it felt nice and airy, nice high ceilings, so it feels nice and spacious. And I thought that could actually be perfect. So we decided to go ahead with that. Needed a huge renovation, which was going to cost a lot of money. I had to borrow the money again on top of the debt that we already had. So I thought, well, once that's done, though, then it's done, you know. And over the course of the tenancy, because the rent was a bit cheaper as well, I thought, well, once that's paid off, you know, it will kind of make its own money back eventually. So went ahead with that, got that done. It took us about 3 months. I was working with a trader who did the work for us, and I'd started to consider future, my family's future, my parents, what they might need from me as they kind of age and stuff, and wanted to secure a future for me and my children. And I decided to make some changes to my home as well. So finished the renovation here and pretty much moved straight onto a home renovation. And within probably 4, 5, I don't think it was 6 months, probably 4 or 5 months, the budget was going down and down and down with this home renovation, and not much was happening other than complete destruction. And I'd questioned the builder. Well, he wasn't a builder, he was a contractor. I'd questioned him a few times on the money, and he was always like, oh no, you know, like, you've paid for this. I paid for all the bifold doors, the windows, I paid for like all the back stuff. Porcelain tiles I was going to have in the back garden to redo the back garden, so that was nice and smooth. At the time, my dad was had to have like help with his mobility, so I had all of that in mind as well when I was thinking about how I wanted to do the house and the outside space. And eventually I found out that the money I'd been sending this trader had not been being spent on what I was sending him the money for. And I realised that money I probably was never going to see again. It was probably more than 2/3 of the budget he'd had in cash already, or transfers, and I was now in a position where my house was completely destroyed. I'd spent a chunk of the money and I wasn't getting that money back or the materials, so I had to start again with a new contractor. I had some savings at the time, which they dwindled off pretty quickly, and I realised I wasn't going to get very far. So I decided to take on another job. So I worked in another, another clinic in Leighton Buzzard for just under a year. So I was working about 6 to 7 days a week, trying to just get extra money in. I'd kind of changed my hours so as I could be more around for my children, because I was on my own now. So I kind of changed my days, so I was doing like 4 solid chunked days in the salon, in the clinic, and then I had 3 days to get my admin done, my housework done, look after my children, like do all of this, the sort of the lifing, the adult in as well. So I had some days, I mean, I didn't have a lot of time, but I thought, well, I could be making more money in that time. So I took this other job, and then that money was just getting ploughed back into the house to try and get a big headway done on that. And I did manage to get a huge amount of it done. It's still a work in progress. I couldn't carry on doing the 2 jobs for that long, because I was absolutely exhausted. I think a year of that and I was on the floor. My energy levels were gone. So I thought, you know what, I'd rather do this slowly, and actually, again, I was thinking I'm going to end up ill again if I keep kind of pushing myself like this. So that's been sort of, my front garden still looks like an absolute building site, and the inside of the house, bits of it are done, and then there's still loads to be done, but it is what it is. It will happen in its own time. And also during that time, just because apparently I don't like to make things easy for myself, there was a lot of talk about what's going to be happening with the aesthetics industry. The government are making changes, new regulations are coming in, and a new course had become available, which was a level 7 in aesthetic practice. I already had I actually had 2 level 4s and 2 level 5s, and I thought, it's all about securing your future. I thought if they make changes, there's going to be a standardised education route, and it's going to have to be something that is a regulated qualification. So although it was a bit of a risk because we don't really know exactly what's going to happen with the industry, I was relatively confident that what will happen is a regulated qualification would be the route that you had to go, which this was. So it's a government regulated qualification. So I decided to do that, which was by far the hardest studying I'd ever done to date. And I completed that in January this year, 2025. But before I'd even finished that, last year I had a lot of experiences with friends and family and clients that were talking to me. I felt like I was just being given these messages all the time, and I was kind of trying to help people with things that they were going through that were kind of not really what I do, but I felt like I had enough information to at least be able to help research with them, people who were going through a lot of hormonal issues. And then one day, one of my friends, who was also a client, we were talking, and she said to me, "Have you heard of the Dutch test?" And I said, "No, what's that?" So she explained it to me. It's dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. So it was a test that was different to what you would get if you went to your doctor's. It's like a 24-hour urine test, and it's really in depth looking into the hormones. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting, because another lady I've just spoken to has been talking about symptoms that she's been going through. So I thought, well, let me tell her about this. So I told her, and both of them were like, "You need to study this. You need to do this." And I thought, I do feel like I do need to do that. It felt like all these things kept happening where it just seemed like that was naturally the route I was about to take. So I'd started doing some research on the Dutch test. I came across a college that they offered a course which was functional wellness and hormone health. And actually, if I go back to lockdowns, during lockdown I'd actually looked into going to university and studying biomedical science, because one of the things that was bothering me, and has always bothered me, is how our kind of healthcare system is very much reactive. There's nothing really about preventative healthcare. I was talking to someone the other day, and I kind of feel like the way our healthcare system works is as if we used the morning after pill as our main form of contraception and didn't take any other precautions other than that when it comes to contraception. That's how I feel our healthcare system works. We're just relying on something that's going to fix the aftermath of all of our decisions and kind of our lifestyles and everything. And in lockdowns, I was looking into going back to university. I found a university. It was actually in Ireland, Ulster University, and it was the only one I could find that did distance learning, and I would have to go over there like for X amount of weeks a year to go and do the lab work. But it seemed like the only option at the time if I wanted to go down the route, and what I wanted to get to was being able to help people with preventative healthcare, preventative education in preventative healthcare, so as we could learn how to look after ourselves, so we're not having to rely so heavily on our current model of the healthcare system that we've got. But it wasn't really an option. Money, time, it was probably going to take me about 7 years to do it, and I didn't know that there was any other route that I could take. So when I found the college that I'm now currently attending, the functional wellness, I hadn't even known that that was an option before, and it really was kind of ticking all of the things that I wanted from my sort of, if I'd gone to university to do the biomedical science, that was what I wanted to do with it. I wanted to be able to work with people to help build a completely different model of the healthcare system, working from a preventative aspect. So I signed up to do that last year. I started that in November. I was actually still finishing my level 7. I began that in November, then I paused it while I quickly finished my the last section of my level 7, which was my case studies, and then I've picked that up now. So that's kind of where I am. I'm currently doing my studies. I've finished my first unit. I am working with my first lot of case studies. This is on nutrition for health, so this is all about looking at your nutrition, kind of any symptoms that you have, which could be connected to your hormones, and that's really your first step in looking after your health. What we put in our bodies is the absolute first step in our health, and then as I go through the course, it's going to be going down with the next section is coaching, so foundation coaching, which will be looking at lifestyle, and then the next unit will be going into much more in depth in the hormone side of things. So that will be working a lot more with diagnostics and lab testing, and getting a lot more into the nitty gritty of more of our sex hormones. We start with our blood sugars and then our stress hormones, and then we'll be working on the sex hormones later. So going back to what I mentioned earlier about me really thinking about everything that I've been through, all of the things that I've just mentioned are absolute key points or key things that have been a part of the journey that I've had, and the kind of journey that brought me to this point where I'm going to take this new direction with my career. I'm still going to carry on. I'm still going to be a skin specialist. I'm still going to work in my clinic. I'm going to integrate a lot of the hormone health into the clinic, but I want to build something much bigger than that. I want to help so many more people than I've got the ability to help in the clinic. I was having a conversation with one of my clients a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about symptoms that we were experiencing, and I've been experiencing issues. In fact, I think probably even if you go back to those issues in 2016, I think those are all connected potentially with the very early signs of kind of perimenopause. I've also been diagnosed with endometriosis in my adult life after having years and years and years of not being able to figure out what's going on with my body. But I think the kind of looking back over everything, it's really made me realise how it's all connected. And going forward, my main thing that I want to do is be able to help more people. In that discussion, that's what I was going to, completely lost my train of thought there, which another very key sign of perimenopause, what I was trying to get to was the discussion I had with my client. She was telling me about some of her symptoms. I was telling her about some of my symptoms that I've been experiencing, and we were saying that, well, I was saying to her, I feel really, if I didn't work in the industry that I work in, if I didn't have these conversations with my clients, if I wasn't here hearing other people's experiences and kind of talking about mine, I think I would have actually lost my mind by now. I feel so lucky to be in the industries that I am, because they've, as much as I've helped other people, like the women that I work with help me every single day, because they make me feel normal and like I'm not alone and like I'm not going through things on my own, because they're experiencing similar things to me. And we were talking about this, and I said, you know what, some women don't have that opportunity. If I had not had this opportunity, I think I would have actually thought that I'm losing my mind. I've said to my friends on occasions, I'm like, I actually think there's something wrong with my brain. My brain's not working right. and it was actually symptoms of perimenopause. Had I not been able to have those conversations, if I didn't have the friends that I have, and then be in the kind of working environment that I'm in, I would have felt so lonely, and I don't want other people to feel like that, and I know so many people do. So I think what I'm trying to say is, what I want to do is try to make sure that there is a platform that doesn't allow that to happen. I want there to be accessible support, education, information, everything that women need and should have already if our healthcare system wasn't failing us so heavily. I want to make sure that that is available to people. So everything that I've been through, everything that I've done has led me to this moment, and all of that has been leading me to the point where I have realised how powerful it is to be able to use your knowledge and experience to be able to help other people. So that's what this platform is going to be about. This first episode is the story of why I've got to where I've got, but this platform is going to be the first step in creating a space where people won't have to feel alone, women won't have to feel alone. We're going to cover topics about lots of things with women's health, specifically around perimenopause and menopause. That's going to be one of my main focuses. But we will go into other things that are part of my career as well, skin health. We'll go into everything that I can that is going to help people and try to create awareness, create a support system, build a community, get talking about it, make it not a taboo subject anymore. I'm going to talk about my experiences. I've got a lot of people I really hope to speak to with you as well, about their experiences, from professionally to people who have suffered and have found different things that support them. So that was a very long-winded way of me getting to my point, but I felt like it was really important to me. And I feel like it's really important to my story to start this platform with my why, and that is my why. I wanted to be able to help women in ways that I've been helped by other women who haven't even known that they're helping me. And I want to create a safe space again with this, as I have with my studio and my salons and my clinic. I want this to be a safe space for people to learn, grow, educate themselves, be healthier and live a better, more fulfilled life. So that's it, that is my why, and that's why I'm here. And if you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. I will be following up with lots of topics which we will get into hopefully in the very near future. And thank you. That's going to be the end of today. If anyone has any questions about anything that I've spoken about or anything that I think I might be able to help them with, please get in touch with me. You will be able to get in touch with me. I'll make sure there's ways of finding me in any of the captions that go with these, whether this is on a podcast or you're watching this on YouTube or any other platform. So don't hesitate to reach out to me. I don't want anyone to feel alone. I want everyone to feel like they've got somebody to talk to. If I can't help you, I will try my best to point you in the right direction of who might be able to help you. So I'm going to say goodbye for now, and thanks again.